It's where we meet to look at the latest in news, sport and business. We start off with the latest local, continental and international news with Onele Nzinzi at 4 p.m.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Thami. Looking at your top stories, the African National Congress Party in South Africa resolves to look into broadening the 10-party pact, and a nationalist former historian sworn in as the new president of Poland. Your latest news. Greetings to our listeners. The African National Congress Party in South Africa has resolved to look into broadening the 10-party pact. 10 political parties signed an agreement to form a government of national unity for the 7th administration. The ANC Secretary-General Fikile Mbalula says they will engage with other GNU partners to broaden the pact. This came out at the ANC media briefing on the outcome of the NEC held at the weekend. The meeting was called, amongst others, to discuss challenges facing the GNU, the 30% tariffs imposed by the US, as well as the SACP's decision to contest future elections independently. Balula explains.
The NEC resolved to reset the GNU and mandated the officials to engage with current GNU partners to broaden participation, strengthen the functioning of the GNU and give full effect to the statement of intent. The DA wanted a marriage between us and them. We said, no, bring everybody. Even now, we are ready to bring more into this government. Those who want to leave can leave, but this country must not collapse, and it's not going to collapse at the hands of the ANC. It's going to succeed going forward.
The Department of International Relations and Cooperation says it is against the use of symbols and South African flag by the former President and Umkhonto we Sizwe Party leader Jacob Zuma during his recent meeting with Morocco's Foreign Affairs Minister Nassib Bourita in Rabat. The department spokesperson Crispin Piri says while they recognize the sovereign right of Morocco to invite individuals and groups, they are against the use of South African national symbols.
South Africa has indicated to Morocco that the display of national symbols inherently conveys official state endorsements and elevates the perception of the encounter to that of a state-to-state engagement. This characterization is inconsistent with established diplomatic protocol, as the participants did not represent the official positions or engagements of the South African state.
The medical charity MSF says living conditions for nearly 400,000 refugees in Ethiopia's Gambela region are rapidly deteriorating due to significant aid cuts from key donors, including the United States. It says nutrition services in most camps have been suspended. The BBC's Will Ross reports.
MSF says there are now many empty buildings in the refugee camps because NGOs that once provided essential services have pulled out due to aid cuts. It says people are now receiving less than a third of the calories they need. MSF has seen a sharp rise in the number of young children in its therapeutic feeding centres. The UN says across the world, women and children are being hit hardest by the cuts.
Nigeria's Environment Ministry has issued a flood alert to 19 states as heavy rainfall have been expected this entire week. The National Flood Early Warning Center identified areas at risk such as Niger State, where flooding in May killed 117 people and left dozens missing, as well as destroying thousands of homes. It is currently Nigeria's peak rainy season, a period typically associated with severe floods. In 2022, the country experienced its worst flooding in over a decade, where more than 600 people died. And lastly, a nationalist former historian has been sworn in as the new president of Poland after his narrow victory in June's elections. Karol Nawrocki has campaigned under the slogan Poland First, Poland First, something he made clear in his address to Parliament.
Both in discussions with the Polish government, in my decisions and in the international arena, in a diplomatic manner, I will of course support relations within the European Union. But I will never agree to the European Union taking away Poland's competences, especially in matters that have not been included in the European treaties.
Recapping on your top stories, the African National Congress Party in South Africa has resolved to look into broadening the 10-party pact. ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula says they will engage with other GNU partners to broaden the pact. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Liverpool striker Darwin Núñez closing on a move to Saudi Arabian side Al Hilal, while Sun Heung-min has agreed to a contract with Los Angeles FC. Details of these and other stories coming up at the bottom of the hour.
Africa in Business. Africa in Business delivers key insights and real-time updates on Africa's growing markets with Thami Ngubeni. The African Perspective on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa.
It is exactly 6 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time this afternoon on Africa in Business. We'll take a look at the latest developments as far as fees in regard to business and tourist visas that the United States has introduced for applicants coming from Malawi and Zimbabwe. We'll also take a look at the Financing Africa Forward Summit that is currently underway in Johannesburg, and a look at the latest market developments a bit later on this afternoon with ABSA. We begin here. Malawi and Zambia have become the first two African countries whose citizens will now be subjected to visa bonds. This is when applying for B1, B2 visitor visas due to what the United States government says are high overstay rates. So what this means basically is that 2 months after Malawi and other 22 African countries were ordered by Washington to improve its immigration policies or else impose a travel ban on their citizens, this has been the outcome of that. Malawian authorities say they've not received official communication from the United States on this matter. Channel Africa correspondent in Malawi in Blantyre is George Mhango.
The U.S. government says from October 2025, travelers holding passports from Malawi or Zambia must post a bond of up to $15,000 if found eligible for a B1 or B2 visa. While the bond amount will be determined during the visa interview process, the money would be returned to the applicant upon return or if the application is rejected. The US B1 or B2 visa is a non-immigrant visa issued for individuals who wish to visit the US temporarily for business, that's B1, or tourism and pleasure, B2 purposes. B1 visa, that is for business, allows individuals to visit the US for business purposes, such as attending conferences, seminars, or meetings, negotiating contracts or agreements, and is typically valid for 6 months but can be extended. B2 visa, which is for tourism or pleasure, allows individuals to visit the US for tourism or pleasure purposes such as visiting family or friends, sightseeing, or vacationing, and valid for 6 months but can be extended. Some Malawians, like Kingsley Manza, want authorities here in Malawi to discuss with their US counterparts for a review of the visa bond amount, saying it is likely to affect those seeking education, business opportunities, and medical care.
This is almost saying we don't want you here. Someone to raise, let's say someone is going to do is on an education visit or is on the business trip. So to raise a certain amount of money and also raise extra, and we're talking about $5,000 or even $10,000. That's a lot of money in Malawi. I think there should be a way to review, or maybe there's a better way of making sure that people, they don't overstay.
The US has since justified the decision on the basis that the policy is part of a pilot program established under the recently published temporary final rule aimed at addressing overstays recorded in the U.S. Department of Homeland Security during the 2023 Overstay Report. Washington further says all applicants from the two landlocked nations must also submit Form 1 to 352, issued by the Department of Homeland Security, agreeing to the terms of the bond. However, a tourism expert, Jean Kasunda, has spelled doom for budding traders who have just negotiated for trade links with their U.S. counterparts.
The implication is that the U.S. will limit the trade that happens, especially involving budding small-scale traders that ply goods between Malawi and the U.S. These trading activities will go down. And then, eventually, the perception among Malawians and Zambians about the U.S. will go down. Malawians or Zambians will no longer see the U.S. as a friendly country. However, the best thing that we can do as African states is to make sure that we improve the living standards of our people.
What has also been stressed is that payments are to be made via the U.S. Treasury, and the requirement applies regardless of where the visa application is made. Immigration and security experts in Malawi think the measure marks a significant shift in U.S. immigration enforcement toward certain African nations and is expected to impact travel and tourism ventures. 2 months ago, Malawi was among the 22 African nations ordered by the U.S. government to improve immigration policies, or else their citizens risk a ban from traveling to that country. Malawi authorities, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, have declined to comment on the matter, claiming they have not received any official communication from the U.S. government. George Mhango, Channel Africa News, Blantyre.
In this episode of Channel Africa Conversations, Peter talks to Dr. Thulisile Buddha, an academic, author, and an expert in indigenous knowledge systems. Join us for a compelling discussion on preserving African languages and traditions in the digital era. Dr. Thulisile unpacks the role of educators, explorers, and how technologies like AI can support cultural preservation, and challenges us to rethink how we honor African heritage. You can find the episode on YouTube, SABC Plus, and on our website, channelafrica.co.za. This episode is a must-listen for educators, creators, and change makers across the continent. Channel Africa, the African perspective. African enterprise meets global opportunity. Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
It is exactly 13 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. So let's move this story forward. Starting in about 2 weeks' time, the United States government will require visa applicants from Zambia and Malawi to pay bonds of up to $15,000 for certain tourist and business visas. This is according to the State Department. Under this new pilot program, any citizen from these countries who qualifies for a B1, B2 visa will be required to post a bond of $5,000, $10,000 or $15,000, with the exact amount decided during the visa interview process. To break this down further for us, we're joined by Chief Economist at Answisa Capital, Mielani Mkabela. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Africa in Business. Are you with us, Mielani?
SABC Africa.
Lovely to have you with us. So how do you anticipate the introduction of these high-value visa bonds for citizens of Zambia as well as Malawi? How do you think this will affect tourism as well as business travel between these countries and the United States?
Okay, thanks. I think visas have been there. They are not new. So in a continent to continent, I think it is practical that people could have visa. The same as South Africa could be paying a particular amount to be putting in their visa to European countries and North America. So like when you look at this, it is not really going to affect the United States in terms of tourism at all, because what is critical is they are trying to put regulations and measures that could make whether people are traveling for business or for tourism or for their personal reasons, when they're traveling to the United States, and you find that the United States now is having a lot of people that are coming from like countries So that influx is the one that they are trying to manage, so that anyone who comes to United States will have, let's say you come from Zambia. In terms of Zambian kwacha, you are expected to pay around 370,000 Zambian kwacha. And then if you are coming from Malawi, you will be paying around 26 million Malawian kwacha. That amount, if I translate it in terms of South African rands, it is around 270,000 rands. So it is the amount that they are supposed to put, and that could be the surety that when they leave their country, they go to United States at a particular time that is required in terms of their visa, they will be expected to leave. If they don't leave, they lose that amount. But if they leave, that amount gets to be returned to them. So
and
it is not really something
so.
that it's that complicated. It is just an issue of a country that needs things to be done properly. I think,
let me come in here for a moment, Mielani. Let me come in here for a moment. It makes sense if you're looking at it from the United States, because they want to ensure that if you come in there for business or for leisure, that you do indeed leave the country and go back home. But there is this issue of affordability, because here you're looking at anything between $5,000 and $15,000 extra that you need to have as a Zambian and a Malawian before even entering the United States. So the question here is, how is that going to impact travel? Because you're speaking affordability. So not only travel, but perhaps also now let's look at the wider economic repercussions that this could have on trade and investment flows between these countries and the United States.
In terms of trade and investment, it's not going to impact in anything. I can really assure you around that. It's not going to really have any measure. If a continent which is like very far, like traveling to America, you are supposed to have visa. Visas have been there, and even South Africa are paying visa to other countries as well. It's not new. The issue is, if it is stipulated in that way, they might have caution that there are a lot of people that might be coming from the same countries. You understand? And they have to put measures in that way so that they are reducing the number that they have, and the people mustn't really come. So I have looked at the context of the story. It has nothing to deal with reducing foreign direct investment to countries. For people from Malawi moving from Malawi to United States, they are going there for their personal reasons and business, but it can be United States investing in those countries. So if United States want to invest, they will invest. And if the government want to go to United States to raise capital, they will go and raise capital. But they are not going to have or expect people that could be flooding to a country without really knowing what they are doing in that country. Here, it is not issue of they are not allowing them to go there. They are trying to mitigate that people mustn't overstay in the United States. If they overstay, they lose the bond. If they come back in time, they recoup their money. It's part of the expenses that they have to pay. I don't think it is really a problem. Problems could be tariffs related, which we can indicate it to be strategic, impacting the country and the consumers in both countries. But for visas, I don't think it is that of a huge measure. I don't think
because the issue here, in my view, Mielani, is not so much about the visas, as you rightfully state. The visas have been there, for the longest of times. The challenge now comes in having extra disposable income of up to the tune of 15,000 Rand. And that needs to be then budgeted into your travels. And this might bode well for bigger companies, but what about SMEs and the smaller companies that wouldn't necessarily have that $15,000 on the side that will allow them to even be able to go into the country? Yes, you say, obviously, this is not the intention of the United States to stifle, the economic flows, but could this be an unintended consequence of this bond?
No, Thami, it's not really like that. If you don't afford to be going to the United States, you don't afford. I don't think it is really something that you could. It doesn't affect Malawi as well, and it doesn't affect people that want to go to from United States to Malawi or Zambia. It can only affect someone who wants to leave from Zambia or Malawi to United States. And U.S. is not really struggling with tourism as well. So that part is not really an issue. If you thought U.S. will struggle with tourism, but at the same time, U.S. will not struggle with foreign direct investment. It is affordability, I understand, but if someone who is coming from Malawi or Zambia want to go to United States, they will have to afford that, and they will be allowed to get into that country. Which that amount, they will be returned. It will be returned to them. The issue is, if it is not returned to you, it becomes expensive. If it is returned to you, it is something that you can probably budget for.
It's part of your budgeting. Well, thank you very much for your insight this afternoon, Mielani. Very much appreciated.
Thanks, and listeners of SABC Africa.
Thank you very much. That's Chief Economist at Answisa Capital, Mielani Mkabela. And I wonder if you are of the same opinion. If this was meted out on your country, whichever country you are from, do you believe that it would somehow impact the flows of tourists to the United States? And would it have any sort of economic impact on your very own country and even on the United States? Or is it a matter of the fact that Zambia and Malawi perhaps are not such huge contributors to the United States as far as business and tourism is concerned, and therefore their contribution to America's, GDP is insignificant? Your thoughts on this? I'd love to hear what you think, and make it specific to your country as well. Would this $15,000 or $10,000 or $5,000 impact whether or not you decide to go to the United States, whether it's for business or for pleasure? You'll find us on all the various social media platforms. On X, Instagram and YouTube, we are at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook, you'll find us at Channel Africa.
AUSISA, the Association of Water and Sanitation Institution of South Africa, is a platform uniting Africa's water professionals. This November, Africa leads the conversation on water and sanitation. Join global and African leaders at the AUSISA Africa and Global South Dialogue 2025 from the 9th till the 12th of November at the Emperor's Palace, Johannesburg. From policy innovation, this is where action meets collaboration for a water-secure future. Register today at ausisa-watersan-dialogue.org or follow at AUSISA on social media. AUSISA, working together for sustainable water and sanitation security in Africa.
Stella Longwe, Pamalonje.
Palitusokoma pano pamalonje kumvera nyimbo za mu Africa kusangalala kupeza moyo akuti kumva moyo kuti kuyenda bwino pano pamalonje ndiyetu apa tili ndikatswiri oyimba ameneyu ndikatswiri wa dziko la Malawi amene akukhala mdziko la South Africa ndipo amayimba amene akuti ndi Big Nick Malawi. Yatusani kuti kodi moyo wanu oyimba ukuyenda bwanji mu Johannesburg?
Moyo oyimba ukuyenda bwino kwambiri chiliyonse chikutheka ndithu bwino.
Ayi aziwoneka chiliyonse chikutheka mofa magrasi anu apa mwaka akuti kumenya yonse aziwoneka zoti azikutheka ndithu mu Johannesburg.
Malonje pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo. Lowiruka ndi Stella Longwe.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
It is exactly 25 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time as we turn our focus now to South Africa's Standard Bank, which is the biggest bank in Africa by assets, has partnered with Africa Practice to host the Financing Africa Forward Summit in Johannesburg. The one-day summit forms as a subset of the broader discussions that are being held at the Business 20, which is the B20, as a supporting body for the group of 20 companies, or countries rather. The Southern African nation is holding the G20 presidency and will be hosting the G20 summit in the month of November. Luthando Vuba, who's the executive head of international trade at business and commercial banking at the Standard Bank Group, joins us on the line. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon, Thami. Hope you're well, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Oh, I certainly am. I hope you are as well. Perhaps let's start off with a bit of an understanding of the Financing Africa Forward Summit. What is it all about? What do you hope to achieve?
Thank you for that question. So the Financing Africa Forward Summit really is birthed out of the B20 process. And as you've correctly captured, B20 is one of the key working groups or subchapters of the G20, if you like, which is short for Business 20. And as part of that, there are 8 task forces, and one of those task forces is the Finance and Infrastructure Task Force, which is chaired by our Group CEO, Sim Chabalala. And as part of that process, it has been a theme resonating with the other task forces and even in the G20 process. And it was mentioned as one of the pronouncements when the President of South Africa was accepting the presidency of the G20 around, looking at cost of capital as a key theme, and even motivating for a cost of capital commission to be one of the outcomes of the G20 process. So Financing Africa Forward is really to look at that, and we brought different stakeholders to the room, and the panel discussions were looking at the different aspects of that, from the scene and understanding the current context and the different role players in that, and also looking at, from an institutional perspective, getting a voice of the multilateral development banks, voice of business, and also some of the regional institutions such as Africa Finance Corporation was also in the room. So it was really to drive this discussion, get different inputs towards really unbundling and getting down to the bottom of this, both on what it actually is, what could be done better, what could be done better by credit rating agencies, which play a role in how they grade sovereigns in terms of the risk grading. It could be done better by the sovereigns themselves, greater transparency in terms of the budgeting processes, but also looking at projects, what makes projects fail, and really looking at, from our own research, 90% of projects fail at pre-planning stage because technical expertise to ensure that projects are investable, bankable is not always there. So that's really what the summit was about and aiming to achieve, with some key recommendations that can feed into this B20 process.
And you've discussed the panel discussions and some of the themes that are critical to the funding of Africa's infrastructure and its productive capacity. But will you be sharing the outcomes from the summit with the G20 leaders later this year when the first ever G20 summit takes place in Johannesburg?
Yes, that's correct. So per the B20 process, all the task forces to finalize the policy recommendations and be submitting them next month. So that deadline is for next month. And then when it comes to the G20 summit in late November, about a week before that, it'll be the B20 summit where those will be, engaged further as it tees up the discussions and engagements that will be taking place at the G20 summit. Of course, B20 is one of, there's T20, there's Women 20, all of those also having their space to submit recommendations towards the G20 process. So I believe we're at that point where, events such as today and the discussions we had were very critical as we refine and finalize these policy recommendations to submit them to the G20.
Luthando Vuba, thank you very much for that update this afternoon. That's Luthando Vuba. He's the executive head of international trade at business and commercial banking at the Standard Bank Group. He brings us to exactly 4:30 p.m. Central African time. Let's head over now to the markets desk, where Chanduko Legege is standing by with your latest market indicators.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Thami, and a very good afternoon. One US dollar is trading at 17 Rand 93 in South Africa, Botswana 13 Pula 39, Namibia 17 Namibian dollars 93, Zambia 22 Kwacha 90. In Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling 4, Ethiopia 138 B 382, Uganda 3,557 shilling, Tanzania 2,476 shilling. 1 US dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 525. Egypt, the dollar is 48 Egyptian pound 41. Tunisia, 2 dinar 90. Algeria, 129 dinar 651. Morocco, the dollar is at 8 dirham 98. Angola, 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is 2,870 to the US dollar. Looking at commodities, gold is at $3,367, platinum at $1,322 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil, $68.83 a barrel. That is all from me. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
It is exactly 1:32 Central African Time. Let's head over now to the sports desk for the business of sport with Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Thami. Very good afternoon from the sports desk. Liverpool striker Darwin Núñez is reportedly closing on a move to Saudi club Al Hilal, which would then allow the Premier League champions to make a fresh bid for Newcastle's Alexander Isak. Now, Núñez joined the Reds for an initial $87 million from Benfica about 3 years ago, but he has failed to live up to that price tag, according to the transfer specialist Fabrizio Romano. Al Hilal will pay an initial $63 million for the 26-year-old. Núñez was likely to play even less this season after Liverpool signed Hugo Ekitike as well as Florian Wirtz as part of a $350 million spending spree that also includes fullbacks Milios Kirkis as well as Jeremy Frimpong. However, the club could still break the British transfer record by signing Isak, with Newcastle reportedly now demanding a fee of up to $170 million for the Swedish striker. On to this. Meanwhile, Pete Graves sort of reports on this deal that would see Darwin Núñez move to the Saudi Arabian League.
It's understood that the Saudi Pro League club are set to pay a fixed fee of £46.2 million plus add-ons that could take the deal to £56.6 million. And Sky in Italy are reporting that Al Hilal have accepted Núñez's wage demand. So, I mean, it looks like this one is pretty much done, really. AC Milan were interested. They did make an approach, but were always unlikely to ever match these figures. So,
meanwhile, Lyon have signed midfielder Tyler Morton from Liverpool for $25 million. Morton joined Liverpool's academy aged 7 and was also handed his senior debut back in 2021. The 22-year-old struggled to force his way into the first team on a regular basis, making 14 appearances across all competitions, and also spent time on loan in the Championship with Hull as well as Blackburn. Now, he helped England's under-21 side win the European Championship earlier in the European summer. Now, Lyon also were demoted to France's second tier this year due to their poor financial state, but were reinstated to League One after winning the appeal. Liverpool boss Arne Slot has invested heavily in the squad during the off-season, with over $450 million spent on new additions following their title triumph in the 2024-2025 season. At the same time, Sun Young-min has agreed to a contract with the Los Angeles football side side, finalising his move to the Major League Soccer. This after a decade at Tottenham Hotspur. The 33-year-old South Korean superstar forward is joining the Los Angeles Football Club 3 days after he formally announced his decision to leave Tottenham Hotspur. Now, the American side, a deep-pocketed club with significant team success in its first 8 seasons of existence, reportedly paid a transfer fee of more than $20 million, which could end up being one of the most expensive moves for an MLS side. And finally, Kenyan athletes will now pocket hefty cash rewards for medals won at Olympic Games as well as World Championships. This after the Ministry of Sports announced a massive increase in the bonuses. Now, the Sports Cabinet Secretary Salim Vora says that the gold medalist will earn about $23,000, which is up from $6,000, while the silver medalist will then pocket $15,000. Vora saying that this is part of a broader reforms to motivate athletes as well as celebrate them as national icons on the world stage. Of course, the next big tournament to take place later on this year will be the World Championships in Singapore, Japan, where Kenya will have athletes participating in that global event. Well, that's a wrap from the Sports Desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
It is exactly 4:37 Central African time. Still coming up in this half hour, a conversation with APSA's Lindile Malchas as we take a look at some of the latest trading statements that have come out from ShopRite Holdings as well as Pick n Pay. We'll also look at other developing stories as far as the markets are concerned. We begin here, however, with Botswana, who has in the recent past been facing significant challenges regarding the availability of essential medicines as well as other medical commodities. Addressing Botswana's parliament yesterday afternoon in Gaborone, Botswana's capital, Botswana Minister of Health Dr. Stephen Modise said his department is currently not able to offer all the comprehensive health services that it should be offering under normal circumstances. Modise said that development has directly impacted the healthcare system. Channel Africa's Shingirai Madondo reports from Gaborone in Botswana.
Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Health is currently not able to offer all comprehensive health services that it should be able to under normal circumstances. This situation has been aggravated by the outstanding financial obligations owed to suppliers and private health facilities, amounting to more than 1 billion pula. These arrears have directly impacted our ability to procure and supply necessary medical products to the public and health institutions on time and in adequate quantities.
This is Botswana's Minister of Health, Dr. Stephen Modise, dropping the bombshell when addressing South Africa's neighboring country's parliament yesterday afternoon, saying this shortage of funds and medicines has regrettably reduced the country's capacity to continue referring patients to private health facilities for services that cannot be provided within public health institutions. Under normal circumstances, Botswana would refer patients to private players in the health sector within the southern African country, South Africa, as far afield as India, China, and other overseas countries. However, as a result of the crisis that the President Duma Boko-led government finds itself in, Botswana has decided to temporarily suspend referrals for elective and non-urgent medical conditions and operations to private health facilities.
This includes, but not limited to, arthroplasty, this is joint replacement surgeries, insertion of prosthetic eyes, organ transplants, and other conditions or operations that are deemed to be non-life-threatening. Madam Speaker, all these and other non-life-threatening conditions will in the meantime be managed internally at nearest health facilities to avoid deteriorations and complications, while a permanent solution is being sought.
However, Dr. Kifilwe Slema, the president of Botswana Doctors Union or BDU, is of the view that the government is taking a suicidal route of managing some patients' medical conditions in the public health facilities. Dr. Slema said the public facilities in Botswana lack the necessary equipment and personnel to perform some complicated life-threatening surgeries. For nurses, watching patients' health deteriorating in front of them is traumatizing, according to Ure Ditsekileba Khosi, the vice president of the Botswana Nurses Union, or BUN. Kileba Khosi urged the government to prioritize health funding in order to save the population of Botswana, estimated at just over 2.1 million people.
Have tried to guide the government or advise that the government should prioritize health because deferring or postponing patient's booking which actually worsens the condition of the patient. So our plea is for the government to reprioritize health really. We understand their view that the resources are not allowing, but we still maintain our plea that health should be prioritized to save the population of this country.
Sales of diamonds, Botswana's economy saw a steep decline last year, with Botswana, a 50-50 joint venture between Botswana government and DBS Diamond Group, recording a 46% deficit in 2024, dropping from 45.3 billion pula to 24.6 billion pula, marking one of the steepest falls on record. The sharp downturn is straining Botswana's national budget and bank liquidity, with forecasts predicting a record 18.7 billion pula deficit for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. Reporting for Channel Africa from Gaborone, Botswana, this is Shingra Madondo.
Mix Vibration sur Channel Africa.
C'est notre invitée du jour, la belle Aïna Mwenze. Elle est là, certaines l'appellent Boss Lady.
Bonjour Monsieur Jolino.
Parlez-nous un tout petit peu de vous.
Je m'appelle Boss Lady Aïna. Je mets l'accent sur le nom de Boss Lady parce que je mérite cela après le travail fait. Et c'est une rémunération en titre de la personne que je suis devenue aujourd'hui. Épouse et une mère de 4 garçons. Et voilà ce que je peux dire pour l'instant.
Et vous vous êtes lancé dans le business, comment c'est venu?
En tant que mère et se retrouvant dans les pays étrangers, particulièrement en Afrique du Sud, je me disais que laisser les enfants sur la charge des travailleurs ou d'une bonne, ça serait pas très intéressant. Je me suis dit, bon, je dois essayer de m'organiser et trouver un emploi que je peux faire.
Mix Vibration, tous les dimanches de 18h à 19h, temps universel. Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Bina l'export depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Gender-based violence is destroying lives and tearing communities apart. It happens in homes, in schools, at workplaces, and too often in silence. But it doesn't have to continue. If you see it, speak out. If you are hurting, reach out. Because doing nothing is not an option. Listen to all 19 SABC radio stations from Wednesday, 23rd of July for Hard Talk, discussions, advice, dramas, educational shows, and interviews around GBV with experts, survivors, lawmakers, and the whole country affected by gender-based violence. For all your favorite SABC radio stations, call 0800 428 428 to report abuse or get help. GBV, it ends with you. This message is brought to you by the SABC. Africa means business. Tune into Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni for the future of the African economy. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is exactly 4:44 Central African time. We do take a look at the markets around about this time every single week with ABSA, and we are joined today by Lindile Malchas, investment strategist at ABSA, to unpack the latest performance of global as well as local markets. Good to have you with us once again, Lindile. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Thami, and a pleasure to be on the show.
So we see ShopRite Holdings as well as Pick n Pay both having released their trading statements. What were the key takeaways from these updates?
Yes, I think when you're looking at ShopRite and you compare it to some of its peers, it is a cut above the rest. Still seeing very strong growth on the top line from a revenue point of view. And a lot of this has been driven by their core supermarkets business, so Checkers and Checkers Hyper, and also a lot of it coming from the online sales. So 60/60, that's still delivering double-digit sales. The company continues to expand their presence, so opened about 14 stores within the period that they reported in. However, the market didn't react that well to the results. The share was down about 0.5% on the day, and year-to-date it is down by double digits. If you're looking at Pick n Pay, you are seeing a slight recovery there. So revenue not as great as ShopRite, but rising by about low single digits. You are starting to see an improvement within the stores that are owned by Pick n Pay, but you are still seeing that the franchisee stores, those are continuing to struggle. Boxer are still delivering growth within the group, so delivering double digits. And then similarly to ShopRite, you are seeing quite strong numbers within the online sales as well.
Anything else as far as the markets are concerned that you found quite interesting, that piqued your interest?
Yes, certainly. I think some of the key things that we've been keeping an eye on is tariffs. There's always something new coming out of tariffs almost every week. We saw that today the US did announce additional tariffs on India, and that is based on India purchasing Russian oil. And then some of the other key things we will be looking out for from an economic point of view will be the interest rate decision that will come from the Bank of England. Markets are expecting the interest rates to be cut about 25 basis points. And then we also continue to monitor US earnings season as the various companies continue to report as well.
Well, thank you so much for the update this afternoon, Lindile Malchas.
Thanks, Thami.
Thank you. That's Lindile Malchas, investment strategist at ABSA, unpacking some of the latest performance of global as well as the local markets. That brings us to exactly 4:47 Central African time. This is Africa in Business on Channel Africa. Just a quick reminder of some of the business stories that we brought to you today. A look at Botswana, who have in the recent past been facing some significant challenges regarding the availability of essential medicines. This is something that was spoken about in the parliament in Gaborone. The health minister, Dr. Stephen Modise, there saying that the country is unable to meet all of its comprehensive health service needs as it currently stands. We had a report coming in there from Shingarai Madondo in Gaborone, Botswana. Also a look at the finance summit that's currently taking place in Johannesburg, South Africa. A conversation that we had with Lutando Voba, who is the executive head of international trade at business and commercial banking at Standard Bank. Some of the panel discussions that are being held there are around themes of that are critical to funding of Africa's infrastructure and the productive capacity. He mentioned that 90% of the businesses fail at pre-planning stages, and all of the outcomes coming out of that mission will be meted through and filtered through to the G20 in preparation of the G20 summit taking place in November. Also, Malawi and Zambia have been slapped with visa bonds from $5,000, $10,000 to $15,000. This is to ensure that those who go into the United States, whether as tourists or for business, do in fact leave the country when their visas expire. That's just some of what we had in store for you this afternoon on Africa in Business.
Mix Vibration sur Channel Africa.
C'est notre invité du jour, la belle Aina Mwenze. Elle est là, certaines l'appellent Boss Lady.
Bonjour Monsieur Jolino.
Parlez-nous un tout petit peu de vous.
Je m'appelle Boss Lady Aina. Je mets l'accent sur le nom de Boss Lady parce que je mérite cela après le travail fait et c'est une rémunération en titre de la personne que je suis devenue aujourd'hui. Épouse et une mère de 4 garçons. Et voilà ce que je peux dire pour l'instant.
Et vous vous êtes lancé dans le business, comment c'est venu?
En tant que mère et se retrouvant dans les pays étrangers, particulièrement en Afrique du Sud, je me disais que laisser les enfants sur la charge des travailleurs ou d'une bonne, ça serait pas très intéressant. Je me dis, je dois essayer de m'organiser et trouver un emploi que je peux faire.
Mix Vibration, tous les dimanches de 18h à 19h, temps universel.
Stella Longwe pamalonje
palitusokoma pano pa malonje kumvera nyimbo za mu Africa kusangalala kupeza moyo akuti kumva moyo kuti kuyenda bwino pano pa malonje ndiyetu apa tili ndikatswiri oyimba ameneyu ndikatswiri wa dziko la Malawi amene akukhala mdziko la South Africa ndipo amayimba amene akuti ndi Big Nick Malawi yatuzani kuti kodi moyo wanu woyimba ukuyenda bwanji mu Johannesburg?
Moyo woyimba ukuyenda bwinobwino kwambiri chiliyonse chikutheka ndithu bwinobwino.
Ayi aziwoneka chiliyonse chikutheka mofa magrasi anu apa mwaka akuti kumenya yonse aziwoneka zoti azikutheka ndithu mu Johannesburg.
malonje pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo lowiruka ndi Stella Longwe.
In this episode of Channel Africa Conversations, Peter talks to Dr. Thulisile Buddha, an academic, author, and an expert in indigenous knowledge systems. Join us for a compelling discussion on preserving African languages and traditions in the digital era. Dr. Thulisile unpacks the role of educators, explorers, and how technologies like AI can support cultural preservation, and challenges us to rethink how we honor African heritage. You can find the episode on YouTube, SABC Plus, and on our website, channelafrica.co.za. This episode is a must-listen for educators, creators, and change makers across the continent. Channel Africa, the African perspective. African enterprise meets global opportunity. Africa in business on Channel Africa.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Bina l'export depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628. Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It is exactly 4:53 Central African Time. This is Africa in Business on Channel Africa. When we had a conversation just a short while ago with ABSA's investment banker looking at some of the results and the trading statements that came out of Pick n Pay, I guess some really good news there for Pick n Pay as it seems to be going through a bit of a turnaround. And all of this being attributed to its CEO, who has been attributed, for being part of the turnaround that has come out of ABSA. Also, some of the business news that have been coming up, and this is Sean Summers that I'm talking about now, and his leadership has been touted as being bold. Also making the rounds as far as the economy is concerned, the exports face, or rather the tariffs facing South Africa's exports from the United States, 30% the US tariff, and yet still there isn't really a clear path as to what South Africa aims to do regarding this tariff. So that story is still very much under the radar. Also, South Africa's Mineral Resources Minister Gwede Mantashe says he objected to his department because it hadn't been involved in the creation of the mineral plan with the United States, and neither had the Minerals Council of South Africa, which represents most of the mining companies that are operating in the country, saying that there should have been greater collaboration and greater involvement in the various discussions that were being held with the United States, and they're saying that the Mineral Council should have been involved in those discussions. Those are still some of the stories that we'll continue to look at throughout the course of this week on Africa in Business.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge aka Bina l'export depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
And that's how we come to the end of this Wednesday edition of Africa in Business as we make way for the French desk with Vue d'Afrique. Bonjour, Joël.
Thami, bonjour à tous les auditeurs de Channel Africa. Sur Vue d'Afrique, tout à l'heure, il sera question du Burundi, le nouveau gouvernement du tout nouveau Premier ministre Nestor Ntahontouye a prêté serment. Et nous parlerons de plusieurs réactions au Cameroun après l'invalidation de la candidature de Maurice Kamto, mais également pour les grands titres du Rwanda disposés à accueillir jusqu'à 250 personnes expulsées des États-Unis. C'est tout à l'heure sur Vue d'Afrique. Merci de rester connecté. Merci Thami.
Thank you so much. And that's it from the business desk right here on Channel Africa. Until we meet again tomorrow, you have yourself a splendid day further. Over now to Vue d'Afrique and the Joëls.